Second down and 10. Oh, what a hit. Look out. Brad Smith. My goodness. That was vicious.
Concussion.
The concussion crisis.
A concussion.
The movie Concussion.
CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Hello, my name is Will Schmutz and I will be your host today. Football represents America's pastime and is by far the nation's most popular sport today. However, the growing problem of concussions is causing players to retire early and the National Football League to be under constant fire. Even though football is facing these problems, it still continues to grow in popularity at all levels. I will be going in depth on the concussion crisis in football and why football continues to gain popularity even though the dangers of the game are growing. Many news outlets have discussed the concussion crisis, so I didn't want to investigate this issue. Instead, I wanted to look at something that hasn't been researched heavily. I wanted to dive in the culture of football by interviewing former players and understanding what the average players and fans' view on concussions are. I wanted to learn about the mentality of football, and the results I found are shocking. First, I want to give you some background on the concussion crisis. It all started in 2002 when legendary football player Mike Webster died at the age of 55 because of a brain condition known as CTE. An article was released shortly after saying that football players were at an increased risk of getting CTE because of the constant helmet-to-helmet contact they make on every play. The NFL tried to hide information about concussions from the public, and shortly after these articles were published, the NFL fired back with evidence of its own trying to prove concussions weren't an issue in football. However, according to the Union of Concerned Scientists, the papers that the NFL posted were rejected by peer reviewers, editors, and even some of the authors. Ever since Webster's death, the NFL is trying to combat the concussion crisis, and much news has been posted about it. Popularity in football still hasn't decreased, however, and I want to get to the bottom of it. I started my investigation into the culture of football by interviewing a current freshman at the University of Michigan whose name is James Crute, and he has a deep history with football and concussions as well.
Football is my favorite sport. I started playing in second grade, tackle football in second grade, and played every year until senior year, or after senior year of high school. I got officially diagnosed with one in 7th grade one time, and then I'm sure I had a few along the way in high school.
I then asked James about the culture of concussions in football and how players seem to view them as non-serious injuries, and his response to that was what I expected.
I think that concussions are really dangerous and serious, but I think that football players feel like they're letting their team down, I guess, if they're sitting out because of a concussion. So I'm not saying they're not serious, but people fight through them, I think, because they want to do it for their team.
Players don't want to let their teammates down. That message from James Crute stuck in my head, and I wanted to see if this was true for all football players. According to interviews by Mike Network Incorporation, number of football players state that they must condition themselves to play through all types of injuries. They said that players who get injured a lot are labeled as soft, and that decreases a player's reputation around the team. Oftentimes, when players are out with concussions, teammates think it's because they want to skip practice, and these players' actions are viewed negatively. Players fight through concussions because they don't want to lose playing time, so they don't give their brain enough time to heal. If a player were to get concussed again, this is when long-term brain injuries happen, and their health may never be the same. Players must change their attitude towards concussions because fans will always view concussions the same way as players. Until the attitude around concussions changes, no more rule changes will be implemented, and the game of football will continue to cause CTE for all of its players. After looking through all the evidence, the question that it boils down to is, will fan interest in football ever diminish? My last question to James was, what would cause fans to decrease their interest in football?
I think fans don't care that much, as opposed to like maybe players and families of players who are like people who are actually being affected by it. Because like fans probably just want to see the big hits and all that, but like there can still be plenty of that even with the change rules. Like the Will Smith movie that really tells the truth about it and the science behind it.
James may be right that movies and more exposure would cause people to decrease their interest in football, but I think the key that would cause football's popularity to decrease relies on parents. If parents start to realize that football can cause long-term health problems to their kids at a young age, they wouldn't let their children play youth football, which would decrease the talent pool at all levels of football leading up to the NFL. The NFL would become less talented and not as exciting to watch, leading directly to decreased fan interest. This would force the NFL to make major rule changes that promote a safer game. After doing lots of research and talking to the average football fan, they don't seem to care that football can cause major health issues, and they love the violent aspect of the sport. I did a survey asking Michigan students if they decreased the amount of football they watched after hearing about the concussion crisis. 93% of the people surveyed didn't decrease the amount of football they watched. Americans have always loved violence, whether it is action movies or violent sports like football, hockey, and the MMA. However, there was a similar sport that contained much violence but has continued to lose popularity because of its violence: boxing. Boxing was the most popular sport in America all the way up to the 1980s. However, when a South Korean boxer died in the ring in a world championship boxing match in 1982, the sport never recovered. Fans started to realize that boxing was a blood sport, and their moral attitudes against the sport started to change. It's only a matter of time when a superstar NFL player will tackle somebody the wrong way and will die in a game. Only then will fans start to realize that it's morally wrong to support football just like boxing. Football may be the most popular sport America's ever seen, but it's only a matter of time when a real tragedy hits and the game will never be the same.